Well, we're almost at the end of 2021, and before we take a look at the best the film industry had to offer this year, we have to take a look at the worst. So, here are my 10 worst movies of the year 2021. Meaning, the higher up it is on this list, the worst I think it was. Meaning, the number 1 on this list is my pick for the worst of 2021. So, let's get started. Number 10, Home Sweet Home Alone. Now, the main actor who plays the kid was not the problem. He did a good job. He did as good as he could. The problem was the film did nothing new, different, or clever with the premise, and the biggest problem with this movie is they made the burglars essentially victims. They're not breaking into the kid's house because they're criminals, they're breaking into his house to get something back that was taken from them, something that rightfully belongs to them. So because they're sympathetic, it's no longer funny to watch them be tortured by the kid, which was the novelty of these films, was to watch all these clever, elaborate traps and see these stupid burglars get hurt. But now, because we feel bad for them, he just comes off as a psychopath. Number 9, Eternals. This has an incredibly convoluted story, characters you don't really care too much about, and overall the film was just dull and boring. MCU movies are supposed to be fun, but this was boring. Number 8, Dune. Now, I do think this was a well-made movie. It was well-directed, but just because it looks pretty doesn't mean it's good. The story is incredibly hard to follow. I don't know what characters' motivations were, why I should care about them, or what the stakes were. It looks gorgeous, it looks big, but I didn't really feel anything while watching this movie. Number 7, Clifford the Big Red Dog. You know why Clifford has lasted for so many decades, don't you? Because of the bodily humor, of course. This was one of the most lowbrow movies I've seen this year. All the charm and innocence of the books and TV show are completely gone. The film even manages to make Kenan Thompson unfunny. He's not the problem is the writing. He's given nothing to work with. John Cleese was the only good performance in this movie, and he's barely in it. This movie was a big red mistake. Number 6, Tom and Jerry. The scenes with Tom and Jerry causing mayhem and cartoon violence are well animated, but then the plot happens. There's this really dumb plot about a wedding and needing to catch Jerry, so they hire Tom to catch him, and everything outside of the classic Tom and Jerry cartoon violence and antics is boring and dull. They even managed to make Michael Pena unfunny, which is incredibly hard to do. This movie was a catastrophe. Number 5, Space Jam: A New Legacy. An incredibly self-indulgent commercial for HBO Max. The novelty of an NBA star teaming up with the Looney Tunes just doesn't work a second time around. First off, the film is called Space Jam, but it's Space Jam in name only because they're not even in space. They're in a video game. LeBron can't act to save his life, and even the film acknowledges it's lazy. On top of that, most of the films that are spoofed or referenced are R-rated films, so it's not really for kids, but adults will find it stupid and boring. The only good part about it was Don Cheadle as the villain, because he at least had a blast. This movie wasn't made for audiences, it was made for Warner Brothers shareholders and investors. Number 4, Peter Rabbit 2: The Runaway, which is disappointing because it's not the first one was funny and charming. This one is the complete opposite. And what really frustrates me about this film is it knows it's lazy and just expects that by making jokes about how creators of popular things sell out and don't have artistic integrity, we'll forgive it for doing the very thing it's trying to commentate on. And on top of that, the rest of the plot is just a rip-off of The Smurfs 2, which Sony also made, so they're ripping themselves off. But if you're going to rip yourself off, at least choose a good movie to rip off. Don't rip off Smurfs 2. Come on, guys. Number 3, Old. This had such an interesting premise. This had a great mystery to it. I was enjoying the mystery of this film. And then the end happened and completely ruined the entire film. The film's message seems to be that people with certain medical and mental problems should be sent to an island where they can age as quickly as possible so they can die sooner, so society doesn't have to take care of them. M. Night Shyamalan, you should be ashamed of yourself. Number 2, The Marksman. It's Liam Neeson as an expert marksman. This should be exciting. It's boring. It's 2 hours of him driving. There's no action to be found until almost the end. I was bored out of my mind while watching this movie, and it's the cinematic equivalent of Valium. But, as bad as these were, there's one movie that was so disgusting, so exploitative, so awful, that it is my absolute honor to crown it as the worst movie of 2021. And that movie is Dear Evan Hansen. I absolutely hated this movie except for Amy Adams. The film expects us to root for a pathological liar. The The film's commentary on mental health feels ingenuine and exploitative. Its premise is absolutely horrible. It's tacky, it's disgusting, it's exploitative, and I'm proud to crown it the worst movie of 2021. So go ahead and share ranking for the worst movies you've seen this year.